Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about what HIMS is the most associated with. HIMS is quite associated with the GLP-1s, especially if you've been following that stock for the past 4 to 5 months, and there's a lot of chatter online. So the first thing I want to say is whenever I cover HIMS on the channel, I've covered it for a while. I've covered it before GLP-1s were even trendy. This is a company that got started with ED, with hair loss, and they've added many more medications, things like anxiety medications, things like birth control, things like depression medication, all sorts of visits, and they've recently added weight loss. Weight loss is what they've added, and they went after weight loss in 3 different ways. So the first way that they went after weight loss, and this is, I think, where the core of the innovation lies for HIMS, is that they started prescribing old drugs in an off-label basis because these drugs have been associated with weight loss. So the best example of such a drug is metformin, for example. Metformin, it's prescribed for diabetes typically, but it also is associated with weight loss. If you know a bit about longevity, it's also associated with longevity. So what they took is metformin is a cheap, generic drug that's widely available, and they mixed it with vitamin B12, they mixed it with other compounds, and now they make custom weight loss pills that are based a lot on metformin and on similar medication who have the side effect of a weight loss. And the reason why they did that is because obviously, HIMS's average basket on the other drug is $54. And so, as far as branding goes, it wouldn't look very good for HIMS if they started selling Ozempic or Wegovy at $2,000 a month, while their branding so far has been affordable healthcare, $50 for healthcare. And so they decided to price it at $79 a month. And so HIMS customers who's used to paying $55 a month for, say, an ED pill, all of a sudden may be much more compelled to also add, say, a inexpensive weight loss medication in the form of, say, a metformin-based pill. And so that's why they went that route first. And that's a very unique approach. I don't see anybody do inexpensive weight loss meds to begin with, right? Most companies who focus on the GLP-1s, they try, well, first of all, they try to sell the Ozempic and the Wegovy for a very, very high margin, and then they sell compounded version of these drugs, right? Compounded semaglutide is what HIMS here is selling. And how can they sell compounded semaglutide even though these drugs are still under patent? Well, that's because of I guess some people call it a loophole. I don't know if I would call it that, but it's because there's a shortage, right? And by the way, that's me who says emergency use authorization. I'm not saying that's what that is, but there is a carve-out in the FDA that says that you can sell compounded version of patented drugs during shortages, and there's a major shortage of Ozempic and Wegovy right now, and so as a result of that, they are allowed. Once that shortage subsides, if that shortage subsides, then HIMS will have to stop selling the compounded semaglutide, and yes, they will, right? Because they don't want to get sued. It's the law. They follow the law. Then HIMS also sells, and this is something that they're unlikely to stop, in my opinion, no matter what, is the branded version of the drug, right? And $1,800, $2,000. This is the version of the drug where most of the money flows to the manufacturer, right? And in my view, HIMS sells these full price branded meds. It's mostly there for anchoring. It's a decoy. It allows you to look at $79 for metformin and say, oh, wait a minute, I could be on Wegovy, or I could be on metformin for $79. I might as well go for metformin. It's not the same thing. Also, and consistent with HIMS, right? HIMS will not prescribe everything to everyone. They have prescribers who are sovereign. And so if you go see HIMSS and you have only a mild weight loss problem, it's very unlikely they'll prescribe you this, right? They'll prescribe you something milder like a metformin. And if you're underweight, they're not going to prescribe you anything if you're underweight, right? So you still got to go in front of a prescriber, of a provider to get these drugs. And that's part of a HIMSS philosophy, that they can offer multiple types of drugs to the provider, and it's up to the provider to decide which drug the person qualifies, right? The patient qualifies for. So let me move on now, and I'm specifically going to talk about semaglutide, because the compounded version of semaglutide, because there's no debate and probably in the market about just metformin for weight loss or the full price option. Most of the heat that I guess HIMSS is taking is based on this compounded semaglutide. So how does this work? Well, it's a compounded product as allowed by the FDA, and HIMSS is following the marketing that they should not reuse the marketing, right? They don't call it Ozempic, right? They don't call it Wegovy. They don't use any of that marketing. They call it the name of the molecule, right? Semaglutide is what they call it, right? The form factor, you can see this is a pen. This is not a pen. So the form factor is very, very different as well. And the first name in the title of the product is compounded. So in my view, they are safe from a lawsuit. And in fact, it's not just my view. A lot of people online say, oh, they're going to get sued, there's going to be liability, etc. Well, if you do any cursory research on the topic, you can see that, for example, one of the lawsuits of Lilly against fake GLP-1, Axios, here on news site, clearly says HIMSS and hers was not the target of the Lilly suit. However, investors are jittery, right? But HIMSS and hers was not a target. And the short seller attacks, and I'm not going to sell the short seller I'm not going to name the short seller who's doing that, because I don't follow short sellers on this channel. But the short seller attack, you can see like the way HIMSS was attacked on this is saying, oh, well, it's a shady history because a former executive before HIMSS was doing business with this company BPI Lab was convicted for fraud. But you see, that executive was not even working at BPI Labs. That executive was working at a parent company of BPI Lab. I understand one of the investors of BPI Labs. So it's a private company. There's likely multiple companies that own it. So not only are you removed twice from the company itself, but then you're also removed in a matter of time, right? That was back in the day. That wasn't today. And so it's up to each people to make their own opinion. There's bad apples in every company, and if you extend that search for bad apples in, say, every single parent company, well, you're going to find something, and that's what short sellers do. They're very good at finding something that is just enough to put a little doubt, right? And if you put a little doubt in the investors, the short seller report will be just enough to drop the stock price. And then you put options, get in the money, and you make a bunch of money, you sell the puts again, and then you move on to another stock. That is what they do. So, more importantly, though, I think it's fair to say that at some point, compounded semaglutide will not be allowed for sale anymore by a company like HIMSS, because these GLP-1s, Ozempic and Wegovy, hopefully, right, semaglutide, that's what these are made out of. Hopefully, these two will not be in shortage at some point. And so when we are not in shortage, HIMSS can't do that anymore. And this is where the timing of this works perfectly, because there is a GLP-1 that obviously has not been promoted during this craze, because the companies behind Ozempic, they knew full well that it was coming off patent. And that generic GLP-1 is called Victoza, Liraglutide injection, 1.8 milligrams. So that's Victoza. That's a GLP-1 too. It's one of it's the earliest GLP-1. And it came off patent at the end of last year. And the generic for it was just approved from Teva Pharmaceuticals. Their generic authorized generic, was just approved, and you can see it's a generic product. It's a GLP-1. Granted, it's an older GLP-1. It's a less popular GLP-1. Some may say less potent GLP-1, but it is still a GLP-1, and that is off patent. And now Teva has 6 months of exclusivity at launch, as generics do. But that means that on Christmas Eve 2024, that means that anybody will be allowed to make a generic. Right, by the end of 2024, anybody will be allowed to make a generic for Victoza, i.e. Liraglutide. And so, I would argue it would be a good bet to say that by the moment this is not allowed anymore, there will be a lot of generics for Liraglutide, and then Liraglutide will be prescribed. So that's kind of my view on the thesis, and this is why, even though I think I'm happy to own HIMS even without any GLP-1s, but I think the market will be less hurt from the end of GLP-1s, because that end may not come if they start selling a generic GLP-1. And sure enough, they've started to hint that on the calls, if you listen to the call recently. And I want to make a final note here on the competition, and I've addressed competition a few times on the channel. Who are the HIMS competitor, right? The HIMS competitors are those digital pharmacies that bundle the visit with the medication, i.e. they're digital doctors and digital pharmacies combined all at once. So they're not Amazon Pharmacy, but they are companies like Roman, like Henry, like LifeMD. These companies are the competition. And then, of course, the matter here is which company is able to advertise the most, which company is able to create a brand the most. Well, I would argue that's HIMS. I would argue these are a much smaller player in the field, but that's okay. It's a big field. There's a lot to eat for everybody. In my view, though, and this has been thrown around on a lot of websites and a lot of news articles against HIMS, is they say that, now these drug manufacturers are going direct, and then they throw a manufacturer that has nothing to do with GLP-1s, which is Pfizer, and they throw Pfizer for all, and they say, look, Pfizer for all is now just doing direct-to-consumer DTC, and that's going to disrupt HIMS. The answer to that is no. I don't know, but I don't think it is. I just don't see it, because A, you still need a prescription, and B, that does not include, of course, the provider checking you up and like saying, okay, you qualify or you don't. You come to this type of website already with a prescription. And the last thing I'm gonna say is website like Pfizer for all. I mean, I don't think that's very good marketing. The very point of this platform is that it is not for all. It is not for all, right? These RX prescription drugs are not for all. There is a visit. There is a professional that tells you yes or tells you no. They are not for all. So I find the branding of Pfizer for all to be totally not appropriate. No, it's not Pfizer for all. It's Pfizer for those who have been diagnosed and prescribed the product, and that's why you come with your prescription on Pfizer. I think they probably meant this for vaccines, but nonetheless, I don't see this as any form of a serious competition, especially with these older brands that come with baggage, with a legacy, etc., etc., etc. So I don't see them as a competition for HIMS. And this is the end of this video. This is not investment advice, no financial advice, just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.